I'm going to have to apologize in advance because this is mostly going to be a maybe somewhat coherent ramble on Chapter 5 of Deltarune, because I have just recently, I want to say mostly, refinished my playthrough of Chapter 5, right? I'm putting this right at the beginning. Spoiler alert. I'm going all out with spoilers now. It's been a good couple of days. Most people have already finished it twice, 3 times. People have beaten the secret boss and stuff like that. And I imagine, everybody's going around getting opinions, seeing reactions, getting theories down and stuff like that, and just yip yapping away. And right now, I'm suffering from another case of Deltarune in which my feed is just Girona. San Francisco. You know what I'm saying? So I just needed to ramble a little bit and just talk about my general experience with Chapter 5, because I really wanted to take my time this time around and just go through every nook and cranny that was, available to me within this chapter, because when I did play it on stream a couple of days ago, I kind of was lacking time. I really wanted to make sure I beat the chapter off rip so that I wouldn't have to worry about spoilers, and also because, I wasn't off the next day, so I didn't really have a lot of time to, just casually just sit down and do every single thing, or even read every single piece of dialogue in the cafe and stuff like that, right? So I feel like I kind of burned through it, but as per usual, every single time I sit down with a game for a second time, that's usually where I'm able to form my most coherent opinions, right? And that's what I've done pretty much for every chapter technically so far, right? My second time through all of Deltarune, making sure to do all the little extra stuff. I haven't gotten the eggs. I'll do my egg playthrough probably when we get to Chapter 7. I'll do pretty much everything over again just to do every single thing. But the second time around, I've gotten all the shadow crystals. I've gotten just a bunch of little dialogue bits and bobs that people might have missed here and there and things like that. And I wanted to make sure I did the same with Chapter 5 relatively sooner than I did with Chapter 4, because I didn't feel like I burned through Chapter 4, but I did go kind of fast. And then I went through Chapter 4 again, and that was my favorite chapter that was my favorite piece of anything that Toby Fox had ever made. Toby Fox and the team. So here we are with Chapter 5, definitely up there within my favorite chapters now, going back through it, because there is just so much to consider about this chapter. It is so incredible, right? Off rip, I need to say, the humor in this one is just as good, if not on par, or even potentially better than the humor in Chapter 2. Although that's debatable, because Queen is just so goddamn funny. Even Birdly. You know what I'm saying? Everything about the dynamics between everything in Chapter 2 was absolutely incredible. This one, I say maybe on par, only because they were all, you could definitely tell the team is getting more focusing in, honing very heavily in on tuning in the story, you know what I'm saying? They turned up the heat with plot and lore and just general story in the last chapter. So coming hot off of that, they definitely wanted to find more of a balance, because I'll be honest, I love Chapter 4. Is definitely my favorite. It's definitely not as strong in the humor department, only because the tone shift was so different and serious. It was still there, it was still very much present, but it was just so much heavier all the way through. It was just so damn, it almost felt like a different game, right? So going into Chapter 5, it was a little jarring, because meeting all of the different flowers and things like that, all of them are just so it's just so much fun. You completely forget how much fun this world is, how just lively every single one of these characters are, because you spent so much time in the Dark World and everything like that in the last chapter, that it's easy to forget how wonderful these characters are, and how fun and goofy they are, and how funny and dumb they're allowed to be, right? And Chapter 5 really put that balance on display. There was definitely some heavier tone, everything that was going on with Asgore, and him trying to prove that the Dark World exists by, you know, just kind of wanting everybody to get out of his way so that he could just get to the Dark Fountain and wait for the culprit to show up so that he could capture them and, you know, get his job back and everything like that. But at the same time, you know, Flowery, dude, don't even get me started on Flowery. That man has given me so many dangerous vocal stems. It is ridiculous. Oh my god. I have spammed "How do you like my Girona" at least 30 times today alone. You know what I'm saying? Like, it is genuinely that bad. But that just goes to show how wonderful of a character, how easy it is for these guys to get us attached to these characters. It is so much fun, right? And then obviously, you know, Blue, Yellow, Seth, you know, Aqua, all of them. Green, man, Green, the GOAT, the one to do it all, my absolute unit, you know what I'm saying? Orange even. Wonderful, wonderful cast this time around. It was so much fun getting to know everybody. Even the individual enemies were just so damned funny this time around, more so than ever. And it was just such a grand time, right? Of course, the general design isn't what I anticipated, right? I'll definitely do like a comparison video, maybe sometime this week or something. But in my initial, like, you know, hopes and wishes video for things I wanted to see in this chapter, I was pretty much, I think, pretty off the mark. Right, I was very much off the mark with a lot of things. And one of those things was that the festival itself, it wasn't until like well after that everybody pretty much like honed in on the very obvious fact that, you know, this Dark World was going to take place within the flower shop. I didn't, you know what it was, right? I'm always anticipating for things to be much farther away than they actually are, right? So when we got that little hint at the end, like in the middle of chapter 4, when we were kind of skulking around Noelle's house as, you know, just the soul, and we heard Asgore talking about the Shadow Crystal, I was completely under the impression like, oh, he's gonna be a secret boss, but like there's no way they do that anytime soon. Like, maybe we'll see that chapter, like end of chapter 6, maybe chapter 7 even, like Asgore being the, you know, Shadow Crystal boss is something I would have definitely anticipated for way later. I didn't think that we wouldn't even be fighting Asgore in this chapter. You know, I fully anticipated, right, that we were going to take place in a Dark World based on the festival in of itself, and that a lot more people were going to be involved this time around, and that chapter 6 was going to, you know, chapter 5 and 6 was going to be like a half and half of spending a lot of time, like, you know, helping people find them, survive, and stuff like that. It was just going to be a lot messier, you know. But that's, you know, I was definitely completely off the money with that, or at least that's what I think my guess was. I'll come back to that, but regardless, I was off the money with a lot of my guesses. So I was fully anticipating more of like an Edo style, like, you know, samurai going on situation with this aesthetic. I was wrong, but that's okay. You know, I'm glad to be wrong because I like what we got perfectly fine. It's still, and I'm not even like completely off the money on that guess. Like it does take certain inspirations in its design, right? So what we do have here is absolutely phenomenal, right? I am just an absolute sucker for how they did the aesthetic this time around, and there were so many like interesting. It was so interesting that there were so many callbacks to chapter 1, the first half through, right? Or at least when we got to the Dark World, right? There were so many interesting callbacks to, you know, just Field of Hope and Dreams. Now we got the Garden of Hopes and Dreams, and it was like this much more just over-the-top orchestral, just epic version of Field of Hopes and Dreams. Like, it just went all out. Like, they grabbed the whole studio, the whole theater to start playing on that sucker, you know what I'm saying? And then obviously, you know, the general aesthetic, the first quarter through was very reminiscent of, you know, the original Dark World, right? Which was really, really interesting. And then there was Ralsei getting his hat back and getting his original design back, but like with new animations and new just emotes and whatnot, right? His sprites, his emotional sprites were so good this time around. Oh my goodness, right? It's so incredible. It was so incredible to have that little throwback because, you know, it's been, you got to remember, it's been a very very long time at this point since we received chapter 1 of Deltarune. When did that come out? Actually, yeah, it was October 2018. It's been a long time. It's been almost 10 years. Can you believe that? Phew. Phew. As of next year, it'll be 9 years. That's crazy. Regardless, though, yeah, it was just kind of a way to like showcase like how much they've developed, but like they utilized that to bleed into all the new elements that they introduced within this chapter, and that's really, really cool, right? But I do want to, you know, take a step back and just talk about the general situation going on with chapter 5, like the entire thing with the festival. Like it was so nerve-wracking to see, like, you know, what was going to happen with this festival. Like, would they be okay? Would they be able to have a good time and enjoy themselves and everything like that? And I think a lot of us, I think it's safe to say, we're pleasantly surprised that, you know, if you were within the camp of people that absolutely wants Susie and Noelle to find happiness with each other, then you were absolutely rooting for them to, you know, go on this date and have the best possible time, then you are definitely super satisfied with all of the moments that we got within the festival, the first half, or the first like quarter of the chapter, right? We spent so much time just playing wing individual for Susie and Noelle. Like, obviously they are still working on a way to find a way to communicate with each other comfortably without Chris being present. And, you know, they definitely developed to that point while Chris was basically knocked out. They completely forgot that Chris was there. They were out like a light, and Susie and Noelle were just having the time of their lives, just being them. And it was the cutest thing I had ever seen in my life. You know what I'm saying? Oh, of course, you know, in typical Deltarune, Toby and the team fashion, something had to rip at our heartstrings. Of course, poor Rudy is back in the hospital, and Noelle, we got the craziest sprites and animations from Noelle from this chapter. Not only in regular Route, even though that wasn't like as crazy, Weird Route got some crazy stuff. I haven't even played Weird Route, or nor have I seen all of it in detail. But I do know two things. One, that is some of the craziest sprite work we have seen from Noelle by and far. Two, them completely cutting the entirety of the Dark World segment from the Weird Route. Man, I gotta go back and watch that, right? I pray to God nobody... I pray that everybody already knew about this before I did. I'm probably gonna just watch somebody play it. I'm a weenie. I can't hurt these characters myself. I can play evil like games. You know what I'm saying? I could be evil in a game if there's an option for it, right? Even in Undertale, you know, I did the genocide route. In Infamous, I've played evil. I've done the evil karma route a million times, right? Hell, when I go back through Mass Effect 3, my next, or Mass Effect as a whole, I'm probably gonna do a more like dickhead shepherd route. But there's something about Weird Route that just makes me violently uncomfortable. And so to see the little bits and bobs of what I have seen from Weird Route for this chapter is absolutely mind-boggling. Like, they are telling people that are playing that exclusively are living an entirely different life. Like, they are experiencing an entirely different narrative than the rest of us, and it is truly insane, right? Like, I can't wait to see how all of that unfolds. Like, if that ends up being like the good ending for somehow, but that like also somehow turns out to be the bad ending in a way, it would be so interesting to see how that plays out, right? But overall, the festival was generally a good time, getting to, you know, interact with the town. I think a lot of people can definitely agree that we wanted a little bit more from the festival, more actual mini games to participate in, things like that, and just being able to do generally more. Obviously, they could only fit so much within the time allotted, so it's totally fine that it turned out the way that it did. I feel like we got a pretty sufficient amount of scenes and just fanfare from the festival in of itself, but overall, I feel like, you know, a lot of people felt like it was kind of lacking. In a way, it could have been, you could say that, but I think for the most part, it did what it needed to do, and it gave us a lot of time between, you know, this new trio of, or not new trio per se, but this trio of Chris, Susie, and Noelle, and just having as much fun as they can before jumping back into reality and realizing that they still have a very real threat to deal with, right? So obviously, we had to get serious. We had to lock back in. Chris made a damned fountain right in the flower shop. Of course, they were the ones responsible. So we had to just lock in and deal with that, of course. And I think there was a lot of really interesting developments throughout this too. Especially between, like, I think the relationship between the primary cast in Chris, Susie, and Ralsei, and then all of the flowers was so important to me. Like, that is so incredibly important to me. How much it, like, getting to the end of this segment hurt so bad because, like, nobody wants to fight each other. It was so abysmal that like both sides knew that they didn't want to hurt the other. Everything that was happening, as Blue put it perfectly, was a contest of love. It was essentially just like everybody here cares. Everybody, well, even Chris themselves, like, without the soul, Chris themselves, I imagine, also deeply cares for Asgore to an extent. We don't know what their plan is, but we're figuring it out. But even to an extent, Chris does too, right? Everybody that was locked into that battle cares about Asgore and even one another after spending so much time, you know, fighting one another throughout this entire playthrough. Everybody's come to understand each other so much more, and it was so frustrating to hear not only that they had to compete against one another to seal the fountain, but also that this was the only realm in which the flowers could exist. They could not survive staying in a different dark world. They could not be transferred over to Castletown. And so Ralsei and Flowery had, you know, they both had solid points in which it's a little unfair to expect, you know, the flowers to have to give up their one realm where they could finally be themselves and be able to love Asgore openly, and at the same time, you know, both the Castletown and the dark world of the flower shop couldn't both be open consistently, otherwise the roaring would start coming in way too high, right? So, you know, Flowery proposed that, you know, like, okay, well, you're expecting us to give up our world, our home. Why don't you give up yours if you're so scared of the roaring, right? How is that fair to us, you know? And that just posed a really, really deep and interesting question, right? Not question per se, but like a deep, like, ooh, like, that's a fair argument, you know? So, yeah, it was so incredibly critical, story-wise. But you see what I'm saying here? You see how deep that got? You see how serious I got? From going from the absolute just laugh out loud humor throughout the entirety of this chapter, with everything going on with the Pizzarina storyline, and, you know, Stan literally running almost every other stand at the festival, things like that, getting to know what's going on with Tenna and Mettaton, or whoever's living in that house. We assume it's Mettaton, right? Getting to know, you know, how the relationship between Susie and Noelle is developing, right? And everything along those lines. And then going into this very serious, like, you know, obviously even the beginning of the flower shop, Dark World, was just fun on fun. It was just such a good time getting to know each of these individual flowers. Yellow, I adore Yellow so much. I love that dummy. I love him so much. My favorite goat, my favorite flower, man. Oh my god, what a unit. Aqua's up there too. It's Aqua and Yellow are like almost neck and neck. And Flowery is up there too. It's not like I don't like the others. It's just that those three just carried for me in terms of humor. They were just so fun and so damn funny. And it's just like, you grow attached to them so fast. It's truly incredible, right? And then, generally speaking, gameplay-wise, obviously, you know, they had a lot of really fun and unique mechanics throughout the entirety of the game, or this chapter, with very unique, like, bullet patterns and things like that. But I think most of us can agree that the craziest thing they did this chapter was creating an entire mechanic in which the game turns into a platformer RPG. How often is that a thing? Right? Because I'm having a hard time remembering if there's even any general games that constitute as a platformer RPG to that degree. I've never seen that. So the fact that we spent a good half of this right? Just playing normally, getting used to like all these crazy different like unique mechanics, the dash gates and things like that. Super fun. The music was phenomenal on the way up, and in the castle, music was just god tier as always. I still low-key, chapter 4's music still heavy carries for me, but chapter 5 is definitely up there in terms of like just incredible music, right? Probably a close second in terms of the chapters, right? But that 3D or that top down to 2D platformer mechanic perspective mechanic is the craziest thing they've done by and far. And now everybody is convinced if there is another Smash title, if Sakurai is making another Smash title, Chris and the Fun Gang is making it. The Fun Gang is gonna be the new either Ice Climbers or Pokemon Trainer. No in between. It's gonna be the Fun Gang. I have zero doubt in my mind. I'm so ready for that. Because the mechanics that they presented throughout this, with the platforming, with the battling, with like the bullet patterns that you had to evade in like real time, but well, not in real time, but like, you know, outside of the typical RPG fashion that we were used to up to that point, was such a crazy juxtaposition, and I could not get enough of it. Like, I was beside myself when they did that, and man, I'm sad that we're not gonna see that mechanic again. I really am. It's so damn upsetting. So, and hell, honestly, this is gonna sound crazy, right? Because I was gonna get into this. The primary reason I held off on making this video was because I wanted to work my way back through and make sure that I also got my hands on the secret boss this time around. Everybody already knows the secret boss this time around is Mad Mew Mew, and that fight was ridiculous. Like, it's so crazy, right? Jevil, Jesus, like that was annoying, but it wasn't the worst thing in the world. But like, it was definitely a fight, right? It was a good fight. Spamton Neo, that took me a minute. But it wasn't the worst thing in the world. The Knight was disgusting as a secret boss. Like, absolutely, like I think that's early, like, pre debuff Knight, chapter 3 secret boss, equivalent to Sans, almost. Is up there. Definitely up there, I think. Okay. Gerson was the easiest by far. I beat Gerson in one try. I love him. Gerson took one try for me. Hammer of Justice was nothing. Mad Mew Mew is stupid unbalanced. Stupid unbalanced. Because the damage output doesn't make any sense. The evasion tactics don't make any sense, especially with the Bomberman bullshit. The Bomberman shit had me beside myself. I was like, what are you talking about? It was more of me fighting against the mechanics than trying to truly like learn. I mean, obviously I learned the patterns. I beat it. That's why I'm making this video. I just beat Mad Mew Mew. But like, it felt like I was fighting more against the mechanics themselves that felt a little off, as opposed to the actual boss of itself with like very clever patterns, which it was fun. I still like the ideas that were presented there. It was still a solid, fun fight, but like, it was definitely more frustrating than the fights I'd seen up to this point in Deltarune. For a completely different reason, right? Regardless, I still had fun, got past it, and it just made me appreciate Chapter 4 even more. Even though I will say, it's very interesting that this was the last Shadow Crystal that we're getting, which means there's gonna be, there's no secret boss in Chapter 6? How does that work? Right? What? We're gonna run into a Dark World and then, I don't understand. I don't get it. So, I mean, unless there is some kind of like, maybe it's not a Shadow Crystal, it's some kind of like statue or something that we got to get to place the crystals in, or something. Whatever the shopkeeper is doing with the crystals, because they're all his now. So, we'll see what happens with that. But yeah, no. wow, I've rambled for quite some time now. But yeah, no, like, another, I completely skipped past. I just wanted to talk really quick about the development between like Rousey and Flowery was very, very interesting, especially because like right from the get-go, it's so off-putting to see Rousey get that angry, right? To get that pissed off because Flowery abuses the statistics, right? Flowery is meta as hell and abuses the statistics within the game to be the most powerful thing in the realm. That's why he gets around like he does. That's why he's able to do anything he wants. And Rousey is pissed because there's supposed to be something of an order to things that Flowery is completely bypassing and breaking, right? Hell, even you could, when you do the little cafe conversations, Seth notices this too. It's just like, that's crazy that Flowery can just do that. Like, why? There's a reason we don't do that, right? Because everybody's fully aware of like the prophecy, what's meant to happen, what's not meant to happen, and how things are supposed to go. And Flowery was fully willing to cheat as much as possible to try and bypass that prophecy if it meant that Asgore would feel actual love from people that care about him, being the flowers, right? So it was just such a crazy development to see throughout this, you know, Rousey being fed up with Flowery and just like the little moments between them, even like at the pond or whatever that area is called, where Rousey is straight up praying, begging that things turn out better than they're supposed to, right? Because it's such a frustrating situation because like he knows what's meant to happen, but he's thinking like maybe there is a way that we can defy fate here, but it's kind of impossible to rely on the flowers for that. Like, it just seems wrong, you know? So it's just like, it's so messy. It's so messy, right? And then that final fight against Flowery and the gang, bro. What all the mechanics introduced going full tilt, right? Even the Phoenix Wright courtroom mechanic, man, that was so much fun. I loved that fight so much. Easily one of the best in the entirety of the game by and far. It was so much fun doing the courtroom, right? And then they even brought that back for the final fight, and then it led to a epic finale of just oh my god, it was so anime as hell. It was anime as hell having, you know, Chris and Flowery go head to head, sprinting through the field and like colliding. It was the most anime shit Deltarune has done by and far. It was genuinely incredible, and it just revitalized me. It made me so happy to be a part of this journey. All of that culminating into Flowery fighting, just hunting down the fraud, man. Oh my god. Woo! What a battle. What a battle. He said, how'd you like my Gerona? You think you can outspeed a flower? Oh my god. Sick to my gut that we lost Flowery, dog. Sick to my gut. So now we are in a fatal position in which Susie is starting to kind of, how do I put this? Susie's in a strange spot right now, mentally, with the whole, like, you know, preferring the dark world as her home, and, you know, Chris being a little, you know, pushed out now, third wheeling it with her and Noelle, and then, you know, the whole dark world situation. It's messy there too. And on top of that, you know, we got the shelter code now, meaning that chapter 6, I would genuinely be shocked if we didn't end up at the shelter, especially because we heard a little bit about Carol being down there during the festival. Like, she was doing whatever she was doing down there, probably talking to the knight, or whatever, plotting with it, with the knight. We don't know. We don't know. So I'll have my thoughts and like things I want to see or predictions I have for the next chapter probably within the next video. So keep an eye out for that. But we'll play that one by ear. But regardless, I had a phenomenal time. With chapter 5. It was so incredible. I still think like the general heaviness of chapter 4 is what really locked Deltarune in place for me. It's what really really started to make me like really understand like, wow, like Deltarune is that series. Like it's like that. Like this is gonna be like probably one of my favorite series. I think it may be up there. We'll see. But I don't know. It's gonna be a hell of a time being able to. I can't wait for the day where we have all 7 of these chapters and you could just run through everything piece by piece type beat. It's gonna be so incredible to experience this game seamlessly one day. There's gonna probably like 2 years from now, maybe even 3 years, who knows, depending on development for chapter 7, that we'll be able to experience this entire game in its entirety, like day after day, piece by piece, right? It's gonna be something. It's gonna be something incredible, and I cannot wait. And chapter 5 really solidified that, and I'm ready for it, man. I really am. And all right, I've yapped enough. That about does it for me. So we'll talk more about Deltarune soon. But I'm passing the mic over to you guys, and I want you guys to tell me everything that you're thinking in the comment section below. Are you feeling good about chapter 5? Did you have a phenomenal time? Was this a phenomenal chapter for you? Did you enjoy yourself immensely? Were you enamored by all of the characters and the music and the mechanics and the aesthetics and the plot and the theming and everything involved within this chapter? Or are you opposed to a lot of it? You weren't feeling this chapter as much. You felt like it was more of a filler chapter, quote unquote, as people have been saying for some reason, even though it's definitely not. Are you really not feeling this chapter like that and it just didn't resonate with you? Tell me everything that you guys are thinking in the comment section below, because you know for a fact that I'm always going to be down there with you guys. But with that, yes ma'am, it does appear to be skedaddle o'clock, so I'm going to go ahead and do just that. I'd like to thank you guys ever so much for watching. I truly do hope you enjoyed. Do me the greatest favor of dropping a like and a comment, and consider subscribing for more content just like this here. And with that, I'm gone. So thanks again, hope you enjoyed, and I'll be seeing you guys in the next video. Do me the greatest favor of taking good ass care, and I'll see you all next time. Bye!
Doing donuts in a bin. I stay funky. Battle goes wherever I am. I stay funky. I don't know who's ready to spit. Just know you're going down with my 58 clips. I stay funky. Honey's taking back to the crib. I stay funky. Get the club popped off like pain. I stay funky. I don't know.